All right, there's Virginia. We have her in the spotlight, so you can see her a little bit better.
Are we ready?
Are you ready?
Yes, I am. I started getting
Tell
ready
us-
after lunchtime.
So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll try and get to them, unless you want to just take it as you're going, Virginia. It's up to you.
Okay, I'll try and catch them here. I have the little chat up on the side. So I am Virginia Louden. My little home bakery is called Ginny Bites. And I've been invited here to share one of my favorite treats with you, which is king cake. It is, if you look it up and you Google it, it goes way back. But I became familiar with it because I was born in Texas and have a ton of family down in Louisiana and the Texas area right on the border there. So I actually spent most of my summers as a kid in Louisiana. And so I kind of just grew to love king cake, although I've never been to Mardi Gras. I've been to New Orleans. I'm not sure if I want to go actually do Mardi Gras. I don't know, 40-something, 5 kids, nobody wants to see that, right? But so I started prepping after lunch. The king cake, for anybody who hasn't had it, I kind of compare it to like a dozen, cinnamon rolls or like a dozen caramel pecan rolls. It's kind of like a nice mix of that kind of treat made in a ring cake form. Before I get any further, I'm going to turn on a cup of milk and start to scald it while we talk. Okay, so you scald a cup of milk and then we're going to put some butter in a little bit. So, but going back to the king cake itself, basically it's an old tradition, and around Mardi Gras time in New Orleans, they are very popular. And kind of the fun thing about it is there's a little plastic baby hidden inside after the cake is baked. And so somebody brings a king cake to the Mardi Gras party, and whoever gets the slice with the little baby hidden in it has to bring the king's cake next year. So it's just kind of this like cake that just keeps on giving. I will say, I got these on Amazon. It was like 100, they're gonna last me forever. Less than $10 for 100, I forget, it's been a couple years since I bought them, but I still have a bunch. And I went ahead and got the 3 different skin tone babies, and I find that people really like that they can choose what ethnicity they want the baby to be in their cake. Some people like it left outside and to hide it themselves. And some people aren't comfortable with the plastic baby in general. So there's chopped pecans in the version that I use. If you just keep 1 whole pecan, and you can hide that in the cake instead. Any questions so far? Cool.
So far, so good.
Awesome. So while I'm getting the milk hot, I'm also, we need a 110-degree 2/3 cup of water. So I already almost boiled some water, and I've got a little cup over here with a thermometer in it. So I'm going to go ahead and start getting that cooled down.
Jenny, are you using whole milk or skim or 2%?
I usually just have 1%. So if it's not something, a really fancy recipe, I'm always just using 1% in most of my things. So yeah, it's a cup of 1% milk. We're going to scald it and then take it off the heat, and you put a 1/4 cup of butter and just melt it in there, and then let it just sit to get lukewarm to room temperature. I'm going to go ahead and drop my butter in now and let that cool. So then while I'm waiting for my water to cool off to 110 degrees, and I'm letting this milk and butter, melt and sit, I'm going to go ahead and start proofing yeast. And for the yeast, it says 2 packages of yeast, so I use 1.5 tablespoons. I prefer not to use the quick rise yeast if I don't have to. So I'm just using active dry yeast today.
Why is that?
I don't know, just something about it makes it feel extra, like, I don't know, homemade. Like I like to make the dough and then set it off to rise, and then I go putz with the kids and the chores, and then I don't know, there's just something super homey about it to me. letting the process happen on its own. Okay, so I'm gonna do 1.5 tablespoons of yeast. And I just do it right in the mixer. If you're gonna be hand kneading, you can just do it in a bowl. But I love my mixer. Although I think it needs repairs. And then we're gonna need 1/2 cup of sugar, but I'm gonna take a tablespoon out of it to feed the yeast while it's proofing. So we'll put that in. Check my water. Almost there. I have this ginormous thermometer. It's way too big for what I'm doing, but that's what it is. There we go. Okay, so we've got the 1.5 tablespoons of yeast, a tablespoon of sugar, and 2/3 of a cup of about 110-degree water. I know, I feel like this part takes a little bit, but I actually, from start to finish, this usually takes about 3.5 hours when you take all the rising time into it. I prepared for you guys today, so we are not going to be waiting for things. I've got things set up in stages throughout the little tutorial here, but this part takes a couple minutes. So really, if anybody has any questions or just wants to say anything, please go ahead, because we just got to wait for this to proof a couple of minutes till it gets all foamy.
Have you ever used cake yeast?
Say that one more time.
Have you ever used cake yeast? The like the cube of yeast?
I don't think so. It doesn't sound familiar to me.
That's the only way we used to be able to get it when I lived in Israel.
Oh, okay.
They gave me like big blocks of yeast.
Really? Did you like
Yes.
chip off some on your own?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Crazy.
Jenny, do you use just plain tap water?
I did, yeah. And I heat it on a kettle, but I don't let it boil all the way so that it cools down faster. But I can just let it sit there for a while and it'll stay hot.
Yeah. I have found when I'm making breads that I've started using bottled spring water, and I get better results on my yeast, because sometimes the tap water has either got too many minerals or too much chlorine.
I never thought about that, but that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
I have a sister-in-law with well water, and after she moved into their house, she all of a sudden couldn't get her bread to rise. And I suggested the spring water, and she started using that, and she found that that made the difference.
Huh. I should try that. I always have bottled water in the garage. I just never think to go grab it. This just has a couple more minutes. I'm going to go ahead and start measuring out a couple of things that we'll need. 5.5 cups of flour. And for this recipe, I don't sift it, although when I'm using flour and I'm not going to be actually sifting it, I just use a whisk and kind of fluff it up in the bowl a little bit. Get the clumps out. And this recipe will actually make 2 cakes. I don't think I mentioned that part yet. Or one really big one, if you want. Is anybody else counting?
Nope, but it's recorded so we can go back and look if you want.
Don't do it, don't do it.
So I
Yeah,
got this really nifty little thing lately, Virginia. It's a Danish whisk. Have you ever used
Oh.
one?
No, what's that?
It's fabulous. I'll go get it and show you.
Okay.
Yeah, it is fabulous because Shelly turned me on to it. I have one.
A Danish whisk.
They're flat.
Really? Oh, I'm really curious. I'm picturing a mashed potato masher.
Yeah, no, it's like that, but it's like a flat head on it.
Cool. Okay. Fluffy flour. And I'm gonna need 2 eggs. And pretty soon we're gonna start putting everything in this bowl and moving on. Oh, I done it. I got shell.
Can you see?
Oh, yeah. Hold on, I just lost a piece of shell in here. I got it. I have never seen that.
Yeah, it's called a Danish whisk. And I used it for biscuits and pancakes and cornbread, and it works amazing.
Fun.
I've had one for about 12 or 15 years, and it's fabulous.
Well, I love kitchen toys. I might have to end up getting one of those. Okay, so this is proofed. We've got our stuff measured out here. So now we're gonna start adding things to the mixer bowl. I have the dough hook on here right now. So we are going to add in the eggs, 2 eggs. I'm gonna put it on low, so hopefully it's not too loud. Can you still hear me? Mostly. Okay, so we're gonna throw in the 2 eggs. I'm gonna do 1.5 teaspoons of salt, table salt. And the recipe calls for 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. I go for a whole teaspoon because there's nothing wrong with extra nutmeg. I highly recommend it. Okay, and the milk and butter mixture can go in there too. Okay, and then once that's all incorporated, I just start adding the fluffy flour in a cup at a time. And then it'll all just start to pull together around the dough hook. This part takes a little bit too. 1 cup at a time, but we all know this, right? My mixer's starting to get a little hot and smelly lately, so I know it needs a service appointment. And I was like, it's got to get through one more thing tonight, and then we'll be good.
The bearings wear out after a while.
I'll turn you up. My mixer's so loud. Almost there. I also, don't laugh at me. I clean as I go. I get a little claustrophobic sometimes. I'm always cleaning. Okay, so now we just have to wait for that to pull together, and then the next step I have prepared, so we won't have to wait after that. So this In the mixer, once it comes together, I just feed it kind of on a medium low for about 3 to 5 minutes instead of kneading it by hand for 8 to 10. But you could just be doing this all by hand, of course. Neat. And then once it comes out of the mixer, you just put the big lump in a greased bowl, turn it over, cover it, and you let it rise for 2 hours until about double. I just paint it on with paper towel. Sometimes you need to push. Now I'm just hoping that somebody will come and buy all of these extras tomorrow, so I don't have to eat a whole bunch of king cake all myself. But it might help do a little promotion on my page, be like, hey, I've got king's cake.
Virginia, do they freeze well?
Say that one more time.
Do they freeze well?
You know, I actually haven't tried freezing them before, but I'm going to tonight. I'm going to try freezing one after rising, but before baking. And then I'll have like a nice breakfast, hopefully to pop into the oven one day. Fingers crossed, that would be wonderful. Okay, so we're going to pretend that's all done. We're going to put it in our greased bowl, let it rise for 2 hours until it's double, which is what I have right here. Punch, that's my favorite part. Anybody else? Okay.
Definitely.
Totally, okay. So now we're gonna divide this in half and make 2 lovely rolls out of it. And actually, I'm getting one step ahead of myself. We have to make the filling real quick. It's really easy and delicious. So I'm gonna melt a stick of butter, or a half a cup. I always cut them in half because that's the size bowl I like to melt them in. All right. All right, so for the filling, we're gonna do a packed cup of brown sugar. And this is where I don't really care about measurements so much because I like a little extra. The first time I made it, I felt like there wasn't quite enough filling for my taste. So when I say a packed a cup, I'm talking heaping packed a cup, just for a little extra filling. Aww. Okay. Heaping cup brown sugar, heaping tablespoon of cinnamon, a half a cup of flour, a half a cup of raisins, and the fillings are, like if you look these up, there's actually a lot of different versions of fillings. I've seen some with cream cheese, some with raisins, without, with nuts. My favorite version is pecans and raisins, so that's what I'm doing today. I know there are some things allowed under our registration that like cream cheese. I love cream cheese on everything, but it just makes me a little nervous. So I haven't had this tested or anything, so I don't do the cream cheese one for now. Maybe someday I'll get around to that. Okay, so the half a cup of raisins. I already chopped all the pecans earlier, so we're gonna need 2/3 of a cup of chopped pecans. I prefer a really rough, bigger chop, but it just depends on what you like.
Jenny, do you toast them first?
I don't, but that would take it up a notch for sure. And then the melted stick of butter. And we just mix it all up until it's kind of just all wet and crumbly. And then this will get divided evenly between the two cake rolls. Okay. Filling is ready. All right, so that dough we punched down, we're just gonna, I just tear it in half. I eyeball it. Little bit of flour. Okay, so we're gonna roll it out to about approximately 10 by 16 inches. Doesn't have to be perfect. I have my little handy tape measure so I can double check. And it's not too sticky. Like I flour my rolling pin a little bit, but I don't really have a problem with the dough sticking to the counter or the pin, which is kind of nice. Little bit stretchy. See.
What's the difference between that dough and cinnamon roll dough?
Not a lot of difference. This one does have like nutmeg and stuff in it. We're almost there. But they're very similar. Okay, so that is approximately 10 by 16. And now I have the filling. I'm just going to take half of it and just kind of sprinkle it evenly over the whole situation. Maybe if I move it over just a little bit, you guys can see it better. Hey, I knew I did it. Okay, I'm just going to take about half. And just spread it out.
Okay, now I'm slobbering all over my keyboard because that looks so delicious.
Oh no, put some saran wrap down on that. Okay, and then we're gonna roll it up, starting with the long side, the 16-inch side, to make a log, a nice spirally log. If any of that yummy stuff falls out, put it back in. Okay, so I've kind of got this log here, and I prepared a cookie sheet with parchment paper. Okay, so I pick it up and you kind of curl it in, so you make a circle. I kind of lay it seam side down. And then I just kind of stuff one end into the other and stretch till it closes. Okay. And we're going to do that for both of them. A little bit more flour. Another roll of dough. I always feel like when I make stuff like this that I got my workout for the day, and then I don't feel so bad. All right, rest of that filling, spread it up. Long side, roll it up. All right. Just making sure all that good stuff stays in there when I pick it up. All right. Okay, so we have these two awesome little loaves. And then using a knife, or I use my kitchen shears, we do a little snips through the top of the dough, about 1 to 2 inches apart, all the way around the circle. All right. So, got little slits there, and now this is going to rise again in a warm place for about 45 minutes. And then we bake it at 375 for about 30 minutes. I usually check mine around 20 or so. I kind of feel like I did some today and I had it in there for 25 and it got just a little bit more brown than I usually like, but it's still going to be delicious. And I have some. So then after it's all baked, we have this lovely round cake roll. Sometimes like a little bit of the brown sugar and cinnamon might, ooze out of the top. Totally fine. It gets this yummy crusty sugar on the bottom. And then we get to decorate it. So what is the best way to do that? I don't want to get icing all over my counter. I'm just gonna do it right over this. Okay, and then for the icing, it's just your standard powdered sugar icing, approximately a cup of powdered sugar and a tablespoon of water or so. And then you do the white icing all over the top. And then I have the purple, yellow, and green sprinkles, which is common. Another fun thing too is you could always use food coloring and make your icing the different colors too, and use sprinkles. That'll give it a little bit even a brighter look. I like the white icing. I'm going to go with that today. And I already made a bunch earlier.
Do you put any flavoring in your icing?
I did a little splash of vanilla. The recipe that I looked up doesn't use it, but I like vanilla in my powdered sugar icing.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so we get steam. And then basically you're gonna pour this over the cake, and while it's still wet, sprinkle the sprinkles on. This would be a really fun one too, like to get some of those like already made sprinkle mixes, or make your own sprinkle mixes with like all the different sizes and shapes. I haven't tried that before, but I think it would be really fun to kind of have more Mardi Gras themed sprinkles.
Is there a specific combination of colors?
Purple, green, and yellow are the Mardi Gras colors. All right, so basically, now I'm just going to go around and do little chunks of the colors. And then technically they're gold, but still pretty. All right. So then this is what a finished one looks like. And I like to decorate at the dollar store. They have Mardi Gras beads, like 8 for $1. Send a couple of those along. One thing I didn't do, I can do it on the other one, is sneaking the baby in. And like I said, I give the customer the choice, just in case they're afraid of the little plastic baby. But I'll grab the other one. I'm gonna do it just for fun. I always, of course, warn them if we're going plastic baby route, put the disclaimer there saying, please, please don't choke on this. But basically, you're just gonna make a little slit in the bottom and put one in. And then whoever gets that piece has to come to you and buy one next year.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the gist of it from start to finish. Any questions?
So do you put like sprinkle any nuts or anything on the top, or is it just the sugar and the decorations?
Just the decorations for me, just in my research, that seems to be the most common way, but they're so versatile, like depending on what you're gonna put in for fillings and stuff. I mean, I would make it your own, like put your own special twist on that, because nobody around here, not a lot of people are gonna know the difference, so make it fun.
We have a question in the chat. It says, how is it usually served?
You slice it. So one of these gets about 12 good slices that I would think equivalent to like a cinnamon roll or something. So I say about 12 servings per cake, and then you just slice it and it's gonna have that nice swirl. I can cut it. Should we cut it? We should cut it. And we can see what it looks like. Sharp knife. All right. Oh, and with coffee. If you're a coffee drinker, this is like
I was just thinking that.
my breakfast tomorrow. So yeah, everybody just gets a nice slice. It's like
Yum.
a cinnamon roll, sort of. They're delicious.
Very nice.
Definitely with coffee.
Yeah, definitely yum.
What else? I'm trying to think if I forgot anything. We talked about all the measurements. This is a recipe I got from allrecipes.com, but I upped the nutmeg, and I always add a little of the brown sugar and the cinnamon and all the fillings because I just prefer them that way. But yeah, pretty much it.
Fantastic.
I was so busy watching you before, I forgot to write down the number of, how much flour you put in.
5.5 cups.
Okay.
If you want, I could go through it real quick while there's not like all the.
Sure.
So for the pastry dough, it's a cup of milk, a 1/4 cup of butter, 1.5 tablespoons of active dry yeast, 2/3 a cup of warm water, approximately 110 degrees, 1/2 cup of white sugar, 2 eggs, 1.5 teaspoons salt, 1 teaspoon of nutmeg, and 5.5 cups of flour. And then for the filling, it is a cup or more of packed brown sugar, a tablespoon or more of ground cinnamon, 2/3 of a cup chopped pecans, 1/2 cup of flour, 1/2 cup of raisins, and 1/2 cup of melted butter. And then for the icing, it's powdered sugar and water, and preferably vanilla also.
Yum.
Did you say it was a cup of brown sugar?
Yeah, a packed cup, but I'm
Yeah.
out of mine. Yeah.
Okay.
How many of them do you usually sell a year?
Not very many yet. They just, like this year I thought was going to be the year that I would sell a bunch. But just personally, I just haven't really been in a good mental place with it. You know, it's just been such a long year, and I haven't been as motivated to get out there and post and get in people's faces like, okay, come and get them, you know. But I'm okay with that. So next year I'm going to go really big for them because they're one of my favorite annual treats to make.
Did you tell a little bit about the history of it?
Not thoroughly. So if you research them, they go way back, and I've read anything from like, you know, representing the cakes from the 3 kings bringing them to baby Jesus and the little baby and the cake. And then there's, you know, in like South America where they have like carnival or, you know, stuff like that. Like lots of different cultures have a version of this, but it goes really way back. And it kind of, the first one I ever heard of was the New Orleans one where it was Mardi Gras and, you know, brought over by French people. So
Yeah, I was reading that it was brought to the United States by the French.
yeah. Yeah, like people who settled in New Orleans, and it's just kind of one of those special treats you get on vacation when you go down there, but why can't we have them here?
Did you live in New Orleans?
No, my family, Lake Charles is the closest that anybody would probably recognize, especially with those hurricanes that just came through. Like my family is on the part of Texas and the part of Louisiana, like 30 minutes across each side of the border. Like that's where all my family is down there. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. How much do you usually charge for one?
When I first started doing them, I think I was charging like 20 or 25 bucks, but that's before I was wizened by, you know, learning so much from the cottage food producers and everything. So I started researching how much it would cost if I went to a bakery in Louisiana and I wanted a king's cake, how much would it cost? So I kind of landed on 35 as being fair for now. And then depending on, you know, popularity or if I'm going to branch out into other fillings, and that might play a part in the final price. But for now I'm doing 35. And I kind of figured it's a lot like getting a dozen, like a pan of cinnamon rolls or a pan of caramel pecan rolls. I would expect to pay at least that much for one of those.
Correct. Okay.
Do people ever request other fillings?
Not yet.
Yeah.
I just think because they don't really know necessarily yet that that's an option. So I guess it makes it easy for me for now.
I think you should try and add some cardamom to it.
That would be really good, especially with the raisins or like golden raisins or something, just to give it a little twist. That would be really good.
I just made some cinnamon rolls with it and they were amazing.
Yum. Yum.
It just seems like the kind of spice that it needs.
Yeah. Oh,
All right, any more
I can
questions?
calm down now. Whew.
I don't know why you were nervous. You did
I
great.
don't know. I don't.
Yes, you did great.
Thank you.
You did a really nice job. Very
Thank
nice.
you very much. Awesome. Maybe I'll have to do it again sometime.
Okay, have you ever made, what are those things in Louisiana called? Bagnettes?
And
Bagnettes?
yes, I have not
Beignets.
tried making that. That is on my to-do list because I love them. Like I've had them at restaurants and stuff down there, but I've never tried them myself.
Okay, so teach us how to do that.
Yeah, I know. I just did churros like a month or two ago for the first time. And I'm like, if I can do churros, I could totally do beignets. If I had a food truck though, it would be sort of, there'd be a Southern flair to it. I would be making them all the time.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. So does anybody else have any more questions?
It looks yummy. It makes me want to make one.
Yay. Yeah, so now after we're done here, I'm gonna wrap up the one I was finishing and freeze those and see how it goes.
Okay, so
So
Let us know
One
how
last-
it goes.
when
sorry.
when you serve it, when you sell it to somebody, do you put it in a box or do you wrap it in paper?
I do a box because I don't like anything to touch the top because I don't want the icing and the sprinkles to come off. Because there's something looking down on it with like beads and you can add like a little extra baby if you wanted for decoration. It's just kind of really pretty to look at. So I don't bag it.
That makes sense.
What kind of a box do you use?
I think I got 10 by 10 by 4 or 5 just to be safe. But a 10 by 10 should work. And I'll put a little cake board on the bottom so they can just lift it out easy.
Okay.
Do you just get it at Joann Fabrics?
You can, I have like Walmart sometimes, but lately I've just been getting like 25 packs or so off of Amazon for now because I'm not really going out shopping very much. usually I'd be out prize shopping, going to Lynn's and like all sorts of places, but now it's mostly Amazon.
All right, well, I guess we don't have any more questions.
Well, you're
Thank
welcome
you
to
so much.
message me. Message me anytime at Ginny Bites.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
we should talk about that. Virginia has a really great website where she puts all different kinds of recipes, not just cottage food recipes, but different recipes that she creates in her kitchen. She likes to share recipes, so go to Jenny Bites and
On Facebook, yep.
on Facebook, and there's always something interesting there.
Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, you guys. Like I said, that was fun.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Virginia.
Thank you.
Nice to see your smiling face.
Aw, thanks. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you for being with us.